conservation goal. Now I just rolled the bus up on the Front Street, the entrance and exit of the zoo. This is where we've got the American Flamingo on the right-hand side. Now that's the right sequence of the cricket. And don't forget all the wonderful things that happen up here on Front Street. Up in front of my bus is the Wildlife Explorers Base Camp and hands-on activities for zoo explorers of all ages. You see the blue buckets going up and down that Sky Safari, unlimited rides for everyone at the zoo. And there's the Dillo. And don't forget, we've got the Reptile House, the Reptile Walk up here on Front Street. So many things to cross off your bucket list at the San Diego Zoo, but you might find them on Front Street. All right, folks, get your hands in the air like you just don't care. It's time to start the tour, heading down the Tiger River Road. Let me give you the rules of the road on our bus. Everyone will need to stay seated at all times when the bus is in motion. There may be a time or two when I pull the bus to the side of the habitat, and I'll stop the bus. And that's when you can stand up to improve your view. But always keep a handle on the back of a chair or on a railing, so if the bus does move, you will be safe. Please do not stand up on our seats, and I'm going to ask you to keep your head, hands, feet, tails, toes, trunks, tentacles, antlers, and antenna. Keep them inside the bus at all times. That's for your safety. Hey, I want you to know our zoo here at Balboa Park, in addition to being a world-class zoo, we are one of the most visited botanic gardens in the world. So check out our plants when you check out the animals, but please don't pick any flowers, fruits, or leaves. We'll just take them away from you when you leave the zoo. Now, I want to show you, we've got a canopy above us right here, and some really large leaves in the understory. Well, that would make this a rainforest habitat. We've got 8 conservation hubs all around the earth. We work with our horticulture team to learn about the animals that we might bring here to the zoo. That way we can improve on the habitat and make it ideal. So for the first stop on our tour, this represents the Asian rainforest. This is the habitat of the Malayan tiger. Get your eyes on the right-hand side. Sometimes your view is better than mine. We're looking for an orange cat with black stripes. Now those stripes help us blend into the environment. But the joke on the bus is that they didn't have stripes, they'd be easily spotted. I'll pull my bus up for the folks in the back in a little bit here. But that is a Malayan tiger from the Malay Peninsula, South Asia. It is an endangered species, taking a nap under the shade of the tree there. So here at the zoo, it's got something called a species survival plan. What that is online dating for zoo animals, match.com.zoo type thing. Because once one of the big cats is ready for reproduction, we trade it out with another zoo that also has a Malayan tiger. We do that through the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And avoid inbreeding. All right, I'll pull my bus up. Let's see if the folks in the back might be able to find that cat. Now, we here at the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, well, we are a conservation organization. Conservation is a concept where we know that we humans are going to make use of the land for our homes, for our food. So we want to make sure some of that land is set aside for plants and animals, for their homes and their food. I guess we call that habitat. Here at the zoo, our habitats are very small and require a lot of human maintenance. The animals inside are ambassadors for their kind, showing us what we would lose if we didn't follow through with conservation. But the goal of conservation is to have these animals living in their wild habitats. That would be outside of the zoo. Inside, we're looking for hippos, and the full taxonomic name of the Hippopotamus amphibians. Well, they are amphibians, spending time in and out of the water. And we can watch that transition through the very thick glass of the hippo habitat. We sometimes see hippos from the bus tour through the glass. Now when that hippo decides to enter the water, they don't really swim. They simply plug their nose and they walk along the bottom. Yeah, they plug that nose as if it was a blowhole of a whale or a dolphin. And it turns out those animals are closely related to the hippo. Hey, do you see a big brown animal moving around out there with white stripes on its legs? That animal is the okapi. Now some people see the stripes and think it might be related to a zebra, but that would be wrong. The okapi is a giraffe relative. It's sometimes known as the woodland giraffe or the forest giraffe. It's from Central Africa. So it's also called the Congolese giraffe. Well, we've got the okapi at our zoo. That must mean back in Africa they still have the original. You know, if you laugh on that joke, this is going to be a long tour, everybody. Now, if you didn't know, our zoo here at Balboa Park, we've been here for over 100 years. But you can imagine some of those first zoo exhibits, they weren't much more than a box with bars in front. We throw an animal inside so that we humans could get up close and get a closer look. Well, we don't have exhibits at the zoo anymore. That's old school. Are called habitats. So the next habitat we'll roll by is swamp monkeys and red-tailed monkeys. And when you look in there, you're going to see ropes and swings for those animals to play with. It turns out normal animal behavior. Yeah, we humans play, so do animals. A predator animal wants to play a game like tag. Figure out if they're fast. And a prey animal, they're going to play a hide and seek. And to learn how camouflage works. But they'll do that with their family and friends, or they do it for real. So we call that play. I made it to the bottom of the hill. Everybody take a look at the right-hand side. There's map marker 15. That heads us up to Commander Bridge, open till 5:30 today. But get your eyes a little bit higher. There's the Basher Bridge. And even further up higher, well, there's your Skyfari again. Lots of landmarks we'll be pointing out on our tour. We're getting around the zoo. Now, as I pull my bus to the left, you should be seeing a whole bunch of flamingos in one place at one time. Now, an ornithologist might say that this is a flamboyance of flamingos. There certainly is a lot of crazy terms for groups of birds, isn't there? Now, before I start on the flamingo, let's look at that purple tree. Well, that's called the jacaranda. We got them here in Southern California, and they're in bloom in June. Now, when I see them in bloom, they remind me that it looks like a tree that would be drawn in a Dr. Seuss cartoon. Well, it turns out Dr. Seuss was Theodore Seuss Geisel, and he was from right here in San Diego. He was from La Jolla. All right, well, got the vehicles moving around me here. Let me draw your attention to that pink flamingo over there. Now, that is the greater flamingo, the one common from the salt marshes of Africa. The front of the zoo is the American flamingo from the Caribbean. But all flamingos get the pink color in their feathers from the food they eat. They turn that unusual shaped bill upside down in the water. It becomes a filter for small things like algae and fine shrimp. Well, it's those tiny crustaceans are loaded up with a carotenoid pigment called beta-carotene. That's the thing that makes the carrot look orange, but we see it as pink in the feathers of the birds. But if they didn't get it in their diet, they're going to fade to white. Much like a feather that might fall off a big flamingo. It fades to white. Now we've got this netting around our birds here because there's a native bird trying to get in. That's a great blue heron back there. Get out of our habitat, great blue heron. That's why we got the netting. You might have the bird flu, and we don't want our birds to be catching the bird flu. Now let me tell you about this unusual bird over there on the left. That's the white-breasted cormorant. Now the cormorant is a diving bird. That means it's going to go underwater and chase after fish. So it's different from most birds. It has solid bones, not the hollowed bones that most birds have. And it also doesn't have a lot of wax on its feathers because that would make it too buoyant. So what happens to the cormorant? It has to dry off a little bit before it can attempt to fly after it's been swimming. The cost of living in two worlds like a cormorant. Hey, if you didn't know, we built our zoo in a canyon, and I'm about to head up the wall of the canyon right about now. Our Mediterranean climate here in San Diego makes it very mild and allows our horticulture team to recreate so many different... But I'm about to head up the hill. Got a little foot traffic here. I'm about to road, that's all good. We're going to head up the hill, everybody. And as I'm heading up this hill, you know what I'm looking at? I see sweet gum tree. I see redbud tree. I see longleaf pine tree. Well, that's a reminder to me that I'm heading us up to the northern frontier. But as we head up to the northern frontier, get your eyes on the right-hand side. We're going to be looking for some striped ungulates from the African plains. That might be a zebra, or it might be a kudu. Now, ungulate, that's a fancy word for a mammal that has a highly specialized digestive system that allows it to get all it can out of its herbivorous diet. To the left of my bus is the most dangerous habitat I know of in all of San Diego. That's Highway 163. If you take that north for 40 minutes, you find yourself at the other front door of our San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, the Safari Park in Escondido, where we've got 18 times the amount of acreage that we have here in Balboa Park. Well, that's a lot more room for those beautiful ungulates to roam. I think I see the zebra in there, and maybe the eland. The eland is the really big one. One of the largest ungulates on the earth. Now on the other side of the wall here, you're going to find the tiny little Sphinx gazelle. That's the one with the inflatable nose. kudu. That's the brown with the tan tip, with the white stripes. That's the kudu. Now another thing about our safari park is one of our conservation hubs in the southwestern United States. We've actually set aside land of our safari park and left it for the plants and animals of Southern California. We call that a habitat corridor. But that's what the zoo is doing our part with our land for conservation. So hopefully you'll get on up there to Escondido and see what we're doing at the safari park. All right, folks, this is one of my pre-planned stops. I'm going to pull out here. I took a look when I came in looking for polar bears. I'll be honest, I didn't see it, so maybe you have a better view than mine. It might seem strange to house the polar bear here in sunny Southern California, but you know their natural habitat of the Arctic ice is being lost as our climate changes. Versus maritimus is the taxonomic name of the big white bear. It's called maritime bear because it spends the majority of the year out in those ice floes, which is a specialized predator of seals. Now climate change, that's our global carbon cycle that's gotten out of equilibrium. We took up a lot of stored carbon from underneath the earth, and over the years we've used that to generate energy. Coal, oil, natural gas. So the other tour, I love to tell the story of the Mazatleco. This animal over here, the brown and white one, was saved from extinction thanks to its inability to jump over a farmer's fence. Yeah, kind of an odd story, but we've got the Mazatleco on the earth. Notice there's no big fence there that separates us from them. That's not a jumping animal. Now the next habitat is an even more endangered species called the Visayan woody pig. It's from the islands of the Philippines, and I'm told there's only a few hundred of these left on the earth. So I'm really glad the San Diego Zoo is taking an active role in the conservation of the Visayan woody pig of the Philippines. Now in the next habitat, a grazer on the ground or a browser on the branches. Now in the next habitat on the right, we're going to be looking at the Chicoan peccary. Looks like a slumber party. Now the Chicoan peccary was once only known from the fossil record. They thought it was extinct, and then they found a living population down there in South America. Well, now we all get to know Chicoan peccary here at the zoo. I had a guest tell me that all the males in that habitat must be named Gregory. Gregory peccary. Oh, that's a good one, huh? All right, I crawled my bus all the way up that hill, and here we are. There's our Skyfari West. Remember, the blue buckets are free. They'll bring you back to the front of the zoo. It's easy, right by the exit, right by the Wildlife Explorers Base Camp. Up here at the top of the ridge, we also have our 4D theater. Now, if you're not familiar with 4D, you'll sit inside, watch a short film, and get all of your senses tickled. That is a slight upcharge, but Animal Kingdom 4D, the wild awaits for you here at the zoo. I'm going to roll my bus very slowly past the habitat on the left. This is where we have two very well camouflaged mountain lions. Now, I'll say it's a large cat because a mountain lion is not a big cat. We define a big cat by having a roar, and the mountain lion has more of a scream. But its range, the mountain lion is all the way from northern Canada in the Americas and all the way down to southern South America. So along the way, different cultures have given the cat a different name. Some will call it a cougar. Some might call it a puma. Some might say panther. Well, you know, down here in Southern California, we tend to call it the mountain lion, you know. You see, I live in the mountains of Alpine, just past El Cajon on the 8th, and we totally have mountain lion sightings out there, bro. And that was my attempt at a California accent, if you didn't catch that. You've been listening to me on the mic for a while, wondering, well, where is this guy from? Well, now's when I'm going to tell you that I was raised in Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. Where everyone has a boat and a motor, don't you know? Hey, I see some folks looking into this habitat on the right. This is where we've got Maine wolf. Now, the Maine wolf is a very elusive creature, and that is the bridge that will take you across the canyon to the Lost Forest. Take you across that Lost Forest where we've got the primates, Treetops Way, brings you over to the front of the zoo. When, of course, you take the elevators down, you're in the Asian Passage by the panda bears and penguins to make use of the Basher Bridge. I just rolled the bus into the Elephant Odyssey past the alligator habitat and insectivorous plants. If you haven't figured it out yet, folks, you've got the bus driver that likes the plants way too much. I love plants because plants do photosynthesis. Entrance of the Elephant Odyssey because, strangely enough, That is a close relative of an elephant. I know that's hard to believe, but if we can strip off the skin and look at the skeleton of that animal, it's very elephant-like, and it includes little tusks in the mouth. Rock, Hyrax. But get your eyes on the right-hand side. Couple of the most famous inhabitants of the San Diego Zoo. This is African lion. I've got Miss Ellen, that's on the perch that's closest to the bus. And there's Curtis. That's her brother. They were born in the safari park up at Escondido. That's a great story, but the story of our zoo involves this African lion. The story is back in 1915 to celebrate the opening of the Panama Canal. We opened up the Balboa Park. We had a great Panama, California exposition. So at that time they had a lot of beautiful buildings like Spreckle, Oregon, and at that time animals were brought to be put on display for the exposition. But the story goes, Dr. Harry Wickerforth was driving through Balboa Park, heard the roar of a lion, got his attention. He went and investigated and saw the African lion was left behind after the exposition. Well, that gave Dr. Harry the idea to start the San Diego Zoo back in 1916. So special thanks to the roar of the male lion, like Curtis. We still hear his roar to the edge of the parking lot. Special thanks to Dr. Harry Wickerforth for following through with his vision for our San Diego Zoo. Now, African lion represents the African savanna hub of conservation. A lot of animals following the reins of the plains. We want to make sure they're all known to future generations. Conservation effort. All right, folks, we are unlocked. We are going to get as close to a jaguar as you can, and then to tell. The jaguar is in the grass. What are called rosettes. Very good camouflage in the canopy. Now that jaguar represents the Amazonia hub of conservation. What's happening in the Amazon is a lot of the rainforest is being cut down, and in its place is left grazing land. Well, that's no good if you're a jungle cat like a jaguar. You're not going to find your food, your mates, in the grazing land. Some say we can connect with the remaining islands of forest habitat, but that's a bit of a band-aid solution. Habitat loss is really the reason that we need conservation's oversight for animals like this jaguar. Now, I've done a little research about this beautiful cat. Her name is Nindiri. And Nindiri is a volcanic crater that's part of the Masaya volcano down in Nicaragua, part of the natural range of this cat. Well, she must be a fiery cat if she's named after a volcano. All right, folks, we're deep into the elephant odyssey. The elephants could be anywhere in the far right. Let's get your attention. We went and got that trail cam and we went saw the footprints of that animal. The tapir left a 3-toed footprint. Really unusual, like a bird or a dinosaur. Turns out a tapir. It is an odd-toed ungulate, shares ancestry with the rhinoceros and the horse. I'm not seeing any elephants out there, but this is the elephant odyssey. I want to tell you a little bit about the habitat we've got there. Those big mushroom shaped, oh, there's Shala, she's way out in the distance. By the way, when you see the elephant here at the zoo, make note of the big ear. The ear of the elephant, the African elephant, gives it away. Some say that ear takes on the shape of the continent of Africa, like on a world map or globe. That's how you know it's African elephant. The Asiatic elephant has the small triangular ears, and the male, well, he's got the big tusks. The female stay hidden inside her mouth, much like we saw in that rock Hyrax. Now the structures that you see out there, utilitries we call them, and hanging down from there is going to be barrels, balls, and bags on ropes and chains where we stuff the elephant's food. They have to manipulate it with their trunk to get that food out, and that keeps the elephants more active here at the zoo. And we say that it enriches their lives, so it's called Elephant Stand in there. We're really proud of that. We're hoping other zoos are going to copy us, because the animals at the zoo should be well cared for, and so should the humans. I think I saw a couple elephants in the yard there. I'll pull my bus up, maybe get a view through the wall. There we go. I got all 3 of them in view there, I think. We call that our bachelor herd, I guess, 3 males. Now, I mentioned the ear of the elephant. Let's talk about the tusk. The tusk of an elephant is simply a tooth. We learned that the Kino checker spot butterfly was in trouble here in San Diego County. So we're working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on that project to restore the population here in San Diego County. Conservation in action right there. All right, folks, coming up on the right-hand side, we're going to be looking for the dromedary camel. Now, when you see the dromedary, hopefully you're going to be noting that one prominent hump Well, that one prominent hump for me spells the letter looking at dromedary. If we had the two-hump camel here at the zoo, well, the name for that is the Bactrian. And then it would have two humps to spell that letter B. But that's the dromedary, the one we've got here. And we've got elephants and camels here in our Elephant Odyssey because we want to take you back in time about 1 million years. We want to go back to the Pleistocene, the Ice Age. And at that time in California, well, we did have elephant-like animals, we had camel-like animals, to the California condor. That's that pink-headed bird at the top of the stump. It's got a wingspan that's over 8 feet wider than this bus. That bird uses those broad wings and its really good eyesight to soar high over the landscape, where it's looking down, trying to find the carcass of something that recently died. Because that's what's known as a scavenger or a carrion feeder, sometimes called recyclers. The other birds in the habitat are ravens. They're also falling into that category of a carrion feeder. So if the big old condor can't find the food it's looking for, it might simply seek out circling vultures or ravens. And then like a big brother, kind of sweeps in and takes over whatever food they're eating. I know, I grew up with a big brother. But it's actually an adaptation among scavenger birds. It's called a pecking order at the carcass. And the largest scavenger goes first. But the story, I'll tell you that I assumed that California condor was our state bird here in California. And I was wrong. The state bird in California is the California quail. But the right-hand side, that animal is sitting so still you think it's a statue, but that's the real deal. Now notice it's on its tippy toes. I call that the ballet dancer of the coast. Those toe pads are a lot like pencil erasers, but it allows that animal to jump very high up onto a ledge the size of a ruler. Very adept. The foot stringer, that means rock jumper. Now once on the topi you've got all that plants, insects, reptiles, birds, mammals, fungus, you've got a fully functioning community of life. And that's like the goal on those baboons. But it's Sydney's Plaza. I wonder if you can guess why it's called Sydney's. Well, if you're looking on the right and you're seeing koala, well, that's going to be your clue. Sydney's is where we have our Australian lightworms here in the outback. We can access our urban jungle and walk. But I'm going to pull my boss on down Center Street. Now we're heading into the center of the zoo. Some folks like to say this is called Bear Canyon. Now, I think I told you back by the mountain lions, the voice you're listening to was raised in Minnesota. Well, I want to tell you guys, I didn't spend my whole life there, you know. I spent half my life on the shores of Lake Michigan, right there in northern Illinois. You know, they got a lot of crazy super fans in that beautiful city of Chicago. And a lot of the sports teams there are named after a particular kind of animal. And that would be the bear. My apologies if you're from Wisconsin. All right, I'm looking into these habitats. This is where we've got a sloth bear female and her 2 cubs. I don't want to miss them, so I'm looking for any movement I can find. I'm not seeing it. So we've actually got 2 of them. I got another one in the habitat in front of me. I don't know which one I want to look at more. But their names are Scout and Montana. They come to us from just outside of Yellowstone National Park and the Rocky Mountains of Idaho. And the story we got was their mother was teaching these 2 that food could come out of garbage cans and dumpsters. Well, that's no good if you're a grizzly bear. It's no good for the humans of that area. So to make all life thrive, we had an agreement to bring them here to our San Diego, California zoo. But we no longer have that big bear roam in the high Sierras or wandering down the Pacific Ocean like it once did. That animal is extirpated here in California. That's how you say it's locally extinct. We got ours from Idaho. And we have been growing here a long time. On the right-hand side of the bus, behind map marker number 11, find a pair of gigantic fishtail palm rising up above the bus. If I ask the upper deck to look up and count the leaves that you see, well, between those 2 trees, you might only get 8, 9, or 10 leaves, because the individual leaf is about 30 feet tall. You feel like an ant underneath the gigantic fishtail palm from Thailand. It's also called King Kong palm. There's another botanic wonder on the left-hand side of the bus. It's tree ferns. Well, tree fern sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? You should be a tree or a fern. Well, in this case, it's the real deal. Tree fern had its heyday millions of years ago, and most of them are now extinct. But the few that still exist, pretending like I'm from different parts of the USA, well, let me finish that story with a new story. The story of the chipping sparrow. It's a wild bird that we don't have a habitat for one. They just eat out of the garbage can. But the chipping sparrow is such a wide-ranging bird anywhere in North America. I could go up to Minnesota, get a chipping sparrow. And if I brought it down here to San Diego and had it sing, the California birds would go, hey buddy, you're not from around here, are you? Because it turns out, just like the regional dialect of our human voice, bird song takes on River Ridge, open till 5:30 today. But when you look up, that's the Basher Bridge. Remember, that's the bridge associated with the elevators. So make use of that here at the zoo. Now, the whole time I kept rolling down that hill, I kept thinking about water. Because water will roll downhill just like my bus rolled down that hill. Well, that's going to be a reminder to all of us that we should never dump anything nasty in our driveway or the street. Because if we do, it's going to flow with water downhill and contaminate the nearest ocean, lake, reservoir, swamp, wetland, marsh, salt marsh, stream, river, estuary, or aquifer. We wouldn't want that to be an ally for wildlife and dispose of fluids properly. I'm talking about water conservation. Like the one in the warm weather, penguin. That's an animal you can watch swim around down below, and then you watch those birds dry off up on top in their tuxedos. Oh, I keep seeing so many tuxedos around for a second. Kind of hid away from us. You guys know what a lemur is? A lemur is kind of like a monkey, but a lemur is definitely not a monkey. It's a monkey like the Madagascar. But we're enough, everybody. We've got an agitated leopard over here. This leopard doesn't seem to like the maintenance people doing the tree work. So the leopard's checking it out. We don't often see that leopard from the bus tour, everybody, so this is a treat. I think we saw the jaguar on the tour. The jaguar and the leopard are sometimes confused. But they're from different parts of the world. The jaguar is a New World species, that means the Americas. And the leopard is an Old World species, that means it's found in Africa and Asia. The leopard sometimes has to haul its prey up into the tree. My superhero, because you're helping us out with our conservation goals. Now remember, we don't inherit this earth from our ancestors. We borrow this earth from our children. All right, take a look at the right-hand side. I got upright trunks, spray of leaves way up high. I'm looking at palm trees. I'm a kid from Minnesota. We don't have palms there. But if you're ever in a warm spot of the earth, like San Diego, likely to find palms. Very successful in terms of distribution, abundance, diversity, but just restricted to warm places. But I want to introduce you to some of the plants in our botanic garden. We've got a large collection of cycads. The cycad has a palm-like frond, so it's sometimes referred